Yeah, just so everyone knows, this meeting is being recorded. It's going to be uploaded to the Be My App website as one of the DragonGlass resources, so everyone will be able to revisit it at a future date. All right, so since it looks like we got everyone in the room, I think we can get started. So the main two people that are going to be presenting today are myself and my colleague Ashu. Just going to be a pretty thorough run through of DragonGlass APIs, some of the services we offer, how to start utilizing the APIs in your projects, and then we're going to wind it down by covering some of the frequently asked questions we've come across for DragonGlass APIs, as well as opening the floor for some questions from you all. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Ashu and we can dive right in.
Ashu, you're on mute.
Thank you. So welcome everyone. I don't know, I put the mute button on. Welcome and thanks for joining this meeting. As part of this webinar, I'm going to cover RESTful APIs that DragonGlass has to offer for Hedera components. So the very first question anyone would ask is, why should I use DragonGlass APIs? So these are few of the top 5 pointers why anybody would want to use DragonGlass APIs. First thing is high availability. So the way we have structured DragonGlass APIs is we have enough redundancy set in place so that we would never be off. There would never be a time when you would not be able to access the DragonGlass APIs. And to do that, we also have proper nooks and balances in place to ensure that there are no DDoS attacks on the APIs. And by how we are doing it is by rate limiting, as most of you would already know that DragonGlass API currently has a rate limiting set, which is 10 transactions per second for any API request. This way we can ensure that nobody is trying to get the application down. The second point is no headache of running and managing your own mirror node. DragonGlass, although it is associated with the mirror node, technically it's a different separate implementation. So the way we talk about it is we also read from record stream. But the way we have structured, we have developed, and we have designed this application is it can be scaled up. And right now we have already tested this application, the pipeline itself, with 10,000 transactions per second. We have tested it and it has worked fine. And we can easily scale it up to 100,000 transactions per second. And this very well goes with in conjunction with what Hedera's transaction volumes are like and how it will increase in future. As more users will start using Hedera, the number of the volume would increase, and that's why we had built this application to ensure that we keep, in terms of volume, we are able to keep up with the Hedera transaction volumes. What we apart from that, what we also provide is a complete transaction traceability right from the record stream file. So once we get the record stream file, we extract the transaction out of it. We can exactly trace it back from the transaction summary that you see on the API to the actual record stream file. We also collect record stream file so that we can use it for auditability purpose. Third, security. These are all the DragonGlass APIs are authenticated APIs. So you will have to provide your access keys when accessing any of these APIs. I'll cover through how to get the access key in another 5 minutes. But for time being, the only thing I want to convey is this is an authenticated API. So you cannot simply do a get on these APIs and get a data. So you have to provide the access key to get the data from the DragonGlass APIs. Apart from this, from DragonGlass perspective, we run our own consensus. Apart from what the Hedera runs, we run our own consensus across 2/3 of Hedera nodes to ensure correctness of transaction. When we get the file, we ensure that that file has been signed by at least 2/3 of the nodes on Hedera network. And if it is not, then we flag it. That's how we do it. Other thing, the fourth point, which is a rich set of developer APIs. So DragonGlass provides the widest range of APIs covering all of Hedera data types across the ecosystem. We provide ways of searching and searching transactions, contracts, accounts, messages, which and covers a whole lot of range which is required by any DApp developers. Finally, we also have access to historical data, and this historical data what we have collected it since OA, that is September of 2019. We have all the data available right on your fingertips. Just make an API call and you will have it. Just a disclaimer, this is on the mainnet. Any questions?
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
All right. So now I'll jump back.
Sorry, Ashu, I have questions, please. Can you go back?
Yeah.
Okay. So first question is, how much data did you store so far since September 19?
So if you go to DragonGlass application, in fact, most of the people, so if you go to the Explorer itself, it will give you
It will give us the amount of data.
yes. So it will show you all the number of transactions since OA. See this?
I see. Okay, this is the okay, and then I have to do the compute myself, right? I don't know exactly how much it is a transaction, but I can approximate. So I'm okay. Okay.
You want in terms of gigabytes?
Yeah.
Okay. So in terms of gigabytes, we have already collected 1.5 terabyte of data.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. And another question I have, please, is about consensus. You say that you are running your own consensus. Could you please elaborate a little bit? What do you mean by that, and why would you expect, not that you expect, but why your consensus should be different from Hedera consensus?
So we are not different. We are on top of Hedera consensus. So Hedera runs its own consensus.
Right. But
right?
here is my understanding, right? If your consensus and Hedera consensus differ, this is a major bug.
So yeah.
Am I right or not?
So what happens is the way record stream is generated is in record stream. So Hedera runs consensus on every transaction. So basically, it gets consensus from various nodes. So what we are doing on top of that is when the record stream file itself is a collection of all the transactions, multiple transactions, or a timestamp. So because a record stream file is generated every 5 seconds, right? So so every node is supposed to sign onto the for record stream file. And what we do is we ensure that at least 2/3 of the nodes in the Hedera network have signed these record stream files. We ensure that the record stream file has not been added maybe maliciously or maybe because of an issue with a particular node. We also ensure that on top of the consensus that Hedera does, because the kind of consensus Hedera does is related to the ledger. We do it on the record stream file.
Got it.
All right. Any more questions? All right. If there are no more questions, I'll go to the documentation. So documentation, you can find API documentation on this link. You guys can hear me properly, right?
Yes.
Crystal clear over here, Ashu.
Yeah, because my internet seems to be troubling, I guess.
Ideally, if you could, Ashu, if you could stop streaming your video, probably would be even better.
Okay. Let me do that. Oh. All right. Is it better?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
All right. So this is Domenico, I think we would share this slide to everyone, right? Is that
Yes.
correct? So on the slide, you have the link to the API documentation. In case you don't have it, on the Explorer itself, you can always go to DevTools, Hedera Data API. When you click on it, you get the API document. You can get to the API documentation. First, I'll explain the structure of the documentation. On the left side, basically, we list out all the APIs that we currently have. Middle section is mostly to do with the description. And on the right section, we have sample code in various languages that could be very useful. So from the API perspective, to begin accessing APIs, the first thing you'll have to do is sign in. So once you sign in to DragonGlass API, you can go to your user profile page, and you'll see Generate API Key button over there. Click on this Generate API Key button, and DragonGlass will give you your access key and your API key. Please ensure to download your API key and access key so that you don't forget the stuff in the future. So by clicking on download, you will copy a CSV file, which will have both your access key and the API key for DragonGlass.
These keys are working for both mainnet and testnet, or there are different pairs?
So they are different API keys. Very good question. So testnet has different API keys and mainnet would have different API keys.
So all we need to do is to select the testnet to generate the API keys, right, on the menu above, right?
So because testnet and mainnet has different user profile, you will have to create separate user profile on both testnet and mainnet to get access to APIs on testnet and mainnet. So these keys are also separate. Now that you have the keys, now you're ready to access data using our RESTful APIs. The only thing you have to provide is a header. Header is X API key, where you will provide your access key. In this case, this is the access key that you will provide. Please be sure that API key is something for your usage. It is not to be provided while you are accessing the APIs. Access key is what you send as part of the X API key header. On the responses side, of course, most of the time you will get 200, but sometimes you might just get other responses as well, 200 being successful. Other response code could be 400, basically bad request, 401 unauthorized, when your API key is, the access key that you're providing is incorrect. 404, not found, the URL is not, the URL that you provided is incorrect. 500 is internal server error. When you get this, in that case, I would suggest reach out to us. Now talking about various data types that we support currently, we support transactions, which is a transaction summary of Hedera transactions. That includes your record information as well. Raw transaction is something that we get directly from Hedera in the record stream file. And we just convert it into JSON format and store it for usability purpose. This is one of the, this is also useful in terms of auditability. And raw transaction will include your record as well as receipt. Accounts, these are Hedera accounts. You can get information when the Hedera account was created, what are the balances on Hedera account, what was the memo field when the account was created. This kind of information can be available through your account object. Contract, these are smart contracts which were created on Hedera platform. So you can basically get access to all the data related to smart contract. Finally, topics. Topic is Hedera. For Hedera consensus service, you can always fetch the topics which were created on the network. This along with all the messages per topic. Like if you want to fetch messages for a topic, you can do that as well. So these are the high level components or data types that DragonGlass support. Just to go through our individual transactions so that you have an idea how things work. So like first we'll go through transactions API. My favorite is the search transaction. Basically, you can use search transaction for anything you want. The kind of rich set of parameters that you have. So you can search a transaction based on a free text search. If you have a memo field, you can search it based on that. If you have something in your transaction, that some text in your transaction that you want to search, you can do that as well. So query it's a free text search. You just type anything, and if whatever you type, if that text is present in your transaction, it will give you the transaction. You can also search transactions based on the accounts. If with this account, if it is a crypto transfer and the transfer has been from a particular account, you want to check that, you can do that, or to a particular account, you can check that. What were the accounts amount transfers? You can also search based on these things. Memo is definitely the contract ID for any contract related contract service type transactions. And you can also search these transactions for a given time range by providing consensus start in epoch, consensus end in epoch. And you can provide that data. By default, these values are start is by default, the start is since OA and end is today, right now, basically. But you can always define your consensus start and consensus end. You can do it by payer ID. Who has paid for the transaction? You can search a transaction based on that. Transaction type and service types are basically your Hedera transaction types and service types. And remaining are form, like for example, from and size. These are meant for pagination purpose. You can always say I want to read all the transactions starting from, based on my criteria, selection criteria. I want to read 10th, starting from 10th transaction, and I want to read 50 of these. So you can basically also do pagination using these. Sort on is, you can provide a field based on which you want to sort the response. By default, this is consensus time, but you can use all these fields to sort your response. Sort by is ascending and descending. So next transaction is, oh, in fact, I forgot to tell one thing. So if you basically see this is all this is related to the search transaction. And on the right hand side, you see that you have curl command, you have Java, you have JavaScript, Go, Swift, Python. You can copy this code as is and start using it. And if you want to see what the response would look like, just click on try and you will get the sample response back. The second API is a transaction summary based on a transaction ID. In case you are aware of what the transaction is, the transaction ID is, you can always search a transaction based on the transaction ID. Most of the current DragonGlass users are like some of them being naming AdStax and TuneFM. They get transaction based on the transaction ID. They have been using it because they get the they get the receipt back when they execute the transaction on the network, and they form the transaction ID and simply request for the transaction. What was the transaction record and what was the receipt that happened on the network. They can very easily get that. And finally, the raw transaction under transaction data type. So raw transaction is always searched based on a transaction record ID. So how transaction record ID is different from transaction ID is, transaction record will also have the status appended to it in the end, success or failed. So you can have multiple transaction record for a single transaction. You can have a duplicate transaction. You can have a success transaction. So you can, if you want to fetch a transaction record based on what was the status, you can do that as well. Coming on to accounts. Account also has a search account API. The first thing that you do, first thing you see is query, free text search, similar to transaction. Apart from that, you can search a particular account based on, you can provide an account ID or multiple account IDs. Created start and created end in epoch is the date range when the account was created, who paid for the account for the payer ID. And if you want to search based on within a duration of which any account that was updated, you can do that as well. From size for pagination, and sort on and sort by for sorting order, as similar to the way it is in transaction objects. You can also search a balance for a given account at a given point of time. So this is the API which will give you the balance at a given point of time. And I'm walking through with the API documentation, but be aware, like for every API, we have the sample record, the sample code here on the right hand side. For every API call, you just copy it. If you want to use an API, you can copy the sample code directly from here. And if you copy to clipboard, you will have the code in available for you to use. Account files. So in an account, you can search for all the files. You can search it based on a date range. And you can basically do sorting, pagination, and also sorting. So for a given account, what were the files which was added? So you can get all those files.
So question, Ashu, please. How can we identify if a specific account is a file or is an account or so let's suppose that I have 0.0.111, right?
Yeah.
You have an API to tell me what kind of account is this? Is a file, is a topic, is what?
Yeah. So the challenge to that is I have also discussed this with the Hedera folks. Currently, there is no distinction between, because the way it is structured, both account and account, topic, and contracts and file, they all have similar IDs. I'm not sure if Pablo is around. Pablo, do you know, like, is there a distinction how you can make that distinction? If you know about that, Pablo, are you around?
Pablo is not around.
Yeah, Pablo's in another meeting at the moment.
All right. So because I have already spoken this with Hedera folks, and they have mentioned that they will in future they will add distinction to basically distinct between account, file, contract. But right now we don't have that the way of distinction.
So in this case, the API that you are showing to us, right, to find all these files, how do you find? Basically, you have to browse the entire database, right? Whatever, all the accounts. How do you identify that is a file or is something else?
So we do it based on that, because if that account is a payer, that has to be an account. if file creation transaction
Okay.
has a pair to it associated, that has to be an account.
Okay.
That's how we do it.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Just before we go much deeper, it looks like there's a question in the chat about if you could talk more about epoch in Hedera, Ashu.
Sorry, about what?
Oh, no, there's a question that came up in the chat from Solomon asking if you could talk more about epoch in Hedera.
Okay, so epoch is basically your Linux representation of dates. It's in, you can basically represent, it's very easy. There are like a lot of epoch converter available. Normally.
Your mic was a little choppy there, Ashu.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, much better.
All right. So epoch is basically your Unix based conversion of date and time. And it's is in millisecond. Normally I use this epoch converter. I mean, this is, again, there are like multiple epoch converters available out there. So if you want to convert a particular date, for example, 12th May 2000, in fact, if I change it to May, not this, if I change this to so if I change this date to epoch, it will give me this. If I change the day, so this is the value that I want to pick up, timestamp in millisecond. Did I answer the question or? Right. Okay, fine. Then I'll go back to the APIs.
Ashu?
Yeah.
Sorry about, so Solomon seems that he doesn't have a speaker, so he asked another question. And he's asking, I was more wondering about how accurate is time in Hedera. If you see the group chat.
Yeah, probably we can come back to the questions at later point of time. Let's first cover the APIs because we have a Q&A session. Probably we'll go through our individual. That works for you guys.
Yeah, just so we can get through the rest of the presentation, just try to remember questions you want to ask, and then at the end, we'll
you can
kind
always
of
type it down in the group chat, and at later point of time, we can look at the group chat.
That works too.
Yeah. All right. So again, the file is done. So next one is account system. So this particular API will histogram view of the particular account.
You might want to look at something with your mic is being a little choppy, it looks like, Ashu.
Is it better now?
Yes.
All right. So, so this particular API, you can get a histogram for balances.
Yeah, sure. Doesn't work. Domenico, probably you would like to, maybe you want to take over.
Ashu, maybe try without the headphone.
Yeah, let me come back again.
Rejoin it, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll be up and running.
You see what happens is that everybody is using internet these days, right? And the entire network is heavily used. So
Yeah, I've been reading there's been a lot of spectrum outages around New York City. I think it's just everyone kind of hopping on.
yeah.
It's crazy. All right, Ashu should be getting back up in just a moment. I'm just gonna pop back in.
Is it better now?
The beginning always
Yeah, it sounds a lot better, Ashu.
All right, I'll go back to screen share.
Awesome.
All right, I'm talking about the histogram. So you can basically search for the balance history for a given time range. You can always provide how do you want to aggregate the response back. You can aggregate by max, average, and sum. And you can also provide the interval. Intervals, currently supported intervals are daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. So you will get change in balances for an interval of daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly based on the range of dates that you provide. This is account transactions. You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah, we can hear you, Ashu.
Right. So with account transactions, so if an account is anyways associated with a transaction, whether a transfer was made to an account, whether a transfer was made from an account, you can get all the list of transactions where this account was involved. So what you have to, again, you can search it based on the date range. You can say, get me an account within this date range. From and size is for pagination, sort and sort by for sorting order. Similarly, you can see what were the transfers made from and to the account. The way we do it in DragonGlass is we call them credits and debits. And you can fetch transactions, fetch transfers. Transfers is the amount of H bars which were transferred for an account within a particular time period. You can again you can do from size for pagination, sort on sort by for sort order. Now to the contracts. So contracts has one of the most important contract API, which I would call is search by contract. Again, query similar to account and transactions. You can do a free text search. You can provide a contract ID and you can add multiple values of contract ID. You can provide when the contract, you can basically fetch for the contract which was created for within a timestamp, within a time span by the payer ID who paid for the creation of contract, by also the timestamp when if the account was updated during this time span. From size for pagination, sort on sort by was sort order. I will skip the call counts. I'll go to the calls. So if you want to know like what were the calls made to a particular contract, you can get that too. So you will put the contract ID and say, give me the calls. You can search it based on the transaction ID itself. If you know the contract called transaction ID, you can do it based on that. If you have the signature, you can provide the signature. This is the function parameter that you see on the transaction summary for a contract call. You can pass that and it will search based on that. You can also search based on the status of the transaction, and you can give a time range between which you want to fetch all the contract calls, from size for pagination, sort on, sort by, or sort order. Now I'll come to Hedera consensus service. So Hedera consensus service, the important ones are search topics. So you can use this API to fetch all the topics created on Hedera network since the beginning. So we have all the topics created since the beginning of HCS inclusion. You can fetch it based on the free text search, similar to account, contract, and transaction, based on memo, based on the topic ID, if you are aware what the topic ID is, created by, who created the topic, created after. Basically, the created by is for the pair ID, created after and before. So if you want to know, like, you want to fetch all the topics which were created within a time span, you can do that. From size for pagination, sort on, sort by for sorting order. The next one is to fetch all the messages for a given topic ID. So you can do that as well. You can provide a transaction ID. Transaction ID would, if you have the transaction ID, you can directly provide the transaction ID. Otherwise, you can also search based on the range of sequence number. So if you have a topic and you want to fetch it based on, get me all the messages which are from sequence number 5 to 20, you can specify that here. Topic running hash is so you can provide the running hash for a given topic of message, and for a given time span. From size for the pagination purpose, sort on, sort by for sorting order. So now I'll go to the file transactions. Just be aware that these APIs are only provide the transactions for a file, not exactly the file itself. So you can search all the transactions which were related to file creation, file updation, file deletion. So you can basically, this is the API. You can provide the time range, from size for pagination, sort on, sort by sorting order. So if you want to simply do it for create file, so you can do that as well. This is for update. This is for append. This is for delete. And if you want to find files for a given account, that also you can do. Right. So this is about the documentation. Finally, we have an FAQ page, which I would suggest anybody who's working on the RESTful API or subscription services should have a look at. So these are the list of frequently asked questions regarding our REST APIs or the subscription service. Some of them being, what is the rate limit of DragonGlass? That is 10 requests per second. One being like what should I pass, access key or API key? Should be access key. So these are the kind of questions you'll get in frequently asked questions. You can check our frequently asked question section to get more details about it. All right, that's it from me. Domenico, you want to take the Q&A?
Certainly, yes. So just going through some of the one question that we just got in the chat. Alex Taylor, question on HCS. Searched messages is a message encoded, and if so, how? You might want to just look at the chat log Alex, the wording there might have been a little confusing. If you want to either unmute or clarify or type it some more.
Hi guys. Yeah, just trying to run a query on the messages, and I'm getting a result, but it's not the text in the message that I've sent. It's like an encoded text coming out of the API. So I just wanted to check how I can get the actual HCS message from the API.
So it is hex encoded. In fact, it is one of the questions on the FAQs as well.
Okay.
So messages are hex encoded.
Mm-hmm.
In case you want to decode it into whatever format you want, you can always decode it back from hex to anything.
Okay, perfect. That answers my question. Thank you.
Wonderful.
And I think there was another question from previously, which we said we will answer later. What was it, Domenico?
Talking more about epoch in Hedera and how accurate time is in Hedera.
So from Hedera perspective, they calculate time based on nanoseconds. So they are pretty accurate. What I can show you of, like, the accuracy is pretty accurate. From our perspective, from API perspective, although we do record nanoseconds, but our search APIs are not as accurate in terms of nanoseconds, but they're accurate till the millisecond level.
Awesome. So one of the questions that we received actually came through to the website is is it possible to use the REST API in C# to download balance snapshots of all accounts on the network?
Yes, it is possible. So in fact, in FAQ we have given, and I can share my screen again.
I'd pull up just show the FAQ page. We can show folks where it is if they ever need to refer to it.
Yeah, so in fact, for C# specifically, there was a question. So does that answer your question?
I mean, beautiful. Yeah, that was it. If anyone currently participating had any remaining questions they wanted to ask, yeah, now would be the time. Here to help you out however we can.
So where should we send our questions?
Oh no, you can just you can either
not right now, but while we are a little bit later, once we are trying to
oh
use API.
yes, very good question. So I'm sort of the main kind of contact between the DragonGlass team and the community participating in it. So I can list out my my email address that people can use to reach out to me individually. I'm also really active on Telegram and in the hackathon Discord channel that Hedera set up. I'm always monitoring that, so that's usually the best way to get a hold of me directly. But in addition, we have a contact form through the DragonGlass site that goes directly to myself and Ashu. If you have any questions like that, we respond to you through that channel. There's a lot of different ways you can reach out to us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other stragglers? Any last questions? It's looking like, oh, thanks for the kind words, Cooper. But yeah, so if folks don't have any remaining questions, that is about everything that we wanted to cover. So like I said in the beginning of the meeting, this recording is going to go up on the Be My App website for everyone to refer to under the DragonGlass resources page. And just as a heads up, in case you guys might have missed the announcement, we will be doing another one of these seminars Thursday at the same time, where we will be going over the DragonGlass real-time subscription service. Should be another really informative session. So anyone looking to join that one, the Zoom links are on the Discord channel and on the Eventbrite pages for these webinars as well. All right, thanks a bunch.
Domenico,
Yes.
one more question, please.
Of course.
Me. So you have two subscriptions, right? The real-time subscription that you are going to talk next Thursday, which is a paid subscription, right? And this subscription, which is free at this moment and probably will be free. So can you tell us a little bit, what is the difference? What do you mean by real-time subscription versus the historic time? When do you consider, yeah, go ahead and I will.
No, yeah, very good question.
Currently neither the APIs nor the subscription are paid as we are talking. They're both free to use right now.
Right, but let's think about the bright future, right? So what is the line that makes, a real-time subscription versus a historic subscription?
So real-time is, so the difference between real-time and live subscription is, so with the real-time and historical subscription is, historical subscription, you have to make an API call. And though that API call has to be, you have to pull the data out. With the real-time subscription, you get the data as soon as it is a push model. So you get the data, it's a queue, you are listening to a queue, and you get the data in the queue as soon as the transaction is executed.
Okay, so if I'm polling pretty fast, I still can get pretty close to that real-time subscription, right?
Yes,
but I'm limited to 10 transactions per second right now with the API, the historical API.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. So there is a limit of 10 transactions per second. And again, even the API itself, the call to API itself will not be, in near future will be based on the usage, it will also be charged. Right now, I don't know what the charge would be, but in near future, because we are running these, DragonGlass itself, the infrastructure is huge. Like we have to support that infrastructure, we'll have to start charging it, but definitely it will be very low as compared to setting up your own mirror node.
So for the real-time subscription, what is the limit of the data rate that can come in?
There is no limit.
I like it. Thank you.
All right. Any last minute questions want to get in before we start winding it down? All right, lovely. Well, once again, thank you everyone for taking time out of your day to join us. We hope it was super informative. And like I said, yeah, we're looking forward to seeing a lot of you on Thursday at noon for the real-time subscription seminar. And all right, thanks everyone for joining. And I'm going to be shutting off the meeting in just a second and posting the recording.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. See you all on Thursday.
Thank you all for joining, and sorry about the internet.
Oh, no problem, Ashu. I think it went very well. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks.